HOA Karen called 911 because I was barbecuing near my pool, so I hosted a cook-off part 1, Sirens and Sizzle. It all started with sirens. Not a prank, not a car alarm, not some faulty smoke detector blaring. Real, full-throated, fire engine-red sirens, screaming down our sleepy little cul-de-sac like my backyard had spontaneously combusted. They came barreling around the corner, lights flashing, neighbors pouring out onto their lawns, craning their necks in confusion, only to find all the chaos centered around my grill. That's when I saw her. Karen, arms crossed, smirk plastered across her face like she'd just solved a murder mystery, standing proudly beside a confused fireman, jabbing her finger at my sizzling rack of ribs like it was a ticking bomb. "He's starting wildfires next to the HOA's water feature," she cried. The water feature, by the way, was my privately owned, completely up-to-code swimming pool. Welcome to the neighborhood barbecue from hell. Just an hour earlier, it was the perfect Sunday, the kind you dream about all winter long. The sun was shining, kids were splashing in the pool, music floated softly from a Bluetooth speaker, and the gentle wisp of wood smoke drifted lazily from my smoker. Absolute suburban bliss. Until the neighborhood tyrant caught a whiff of trouble and decided the world was ending. Karen lived 3 houses down, but acted like the entire HOA was her personal kingdom. Rules for everything, lawn length, mailbox color, curtain shades. She even once filed a complaint against a neighbor for planting non-compliant flowers. It was only a matter of time before she locked her entitled crosshairs on my barbecue. She stormed up to my fence, no knocking, no waving, and started shouting over it like I'd committed arson. "That smoke is violating HOA air quality regulations," she snapped, jabbing her finger like my smoker was radioactive. "You can't just light fires wherever you want." I laughed. "Karen, it's a barbecue. It's Sunday. This is America." "Don't give me that tone," she hissed. "Some of us are trying to relax without breathing carcinogens." "It's ribs," I said slowly, like I was explaining gravity to a rock. She yanked out her phone. "If you're going to be a threat to public safety, I'm calling the authorities." "You're joking, right? You're really calling 911 over a grill?" She didn't answer. She was already dialing, narrating into her phone like she was starring in a disaster movie. "Yes, I'd like to report a dangerous open flame situation. Heavy smoke, propane tanks, children are nearby. Yes." Meanwhile, my buddy Jake walked by in swim trunks, holding a juice box, giving her the world's most confused look. Karen turned her back on us dramatically, as if she couldn't even bear to witness our crimes. 20 minutes later, the fire truck rolled up, lights blazing, sirens blaring. Full hero entrance. I stood there with tongs in one hand, an apron reading "King of the Grill" tied around my waist, flipping ribs. 3 firefighters hopped off their truck, glancing around like they expected to find a burning building. Instead, they found me, a middle-aged guy flipping burgers, while kids cannonballed into the pool. One firefighter, tatted, tough-looking, and zero patience, looked at me at the grill, then at Karen. "She's the one who called?" he asked. Karen jumped in. "Yes! This man is endangering the whole block. There's fire near water, chemicals in the air, illegal meats probably." I could not help it. I laughed. "Illegal meats?" The firefighter smirked. "Sir, is this your property?" "Yep." "Everything under control here?" "Completely. Except for her." He nodded. "Well, we're calling this a false alarm, with a side of wasted resources." Karen gasped. "You're not shutting this down?" "No code violation. the firefighter said, hopping back onto the truck. He's within his rights. As they drove away, I gave Karen a little theatrical wave. Flipped a burger high into the air. She stood there, fuming, her imaginary HOA crown tilting dangerously. But I knew Karen. This wasn't over. Part 2. Karen's paper. War sure enough the very next morning. A neon yellow envelope was taped to my front door. Inside, a citation issued by the HOA board, citing me for unauthorized flame activity within a leisure zone, a completely made-up rule, one that sounded like it belonged in a dystopian cookbook. I stared at it, laughing out loud. Unauthorized flame activity, disruption of recreational airspace, violation of aquatic tranquility. Whoever wrote this must have been sniffing too much chlorine. Karen hadn't just gone off the rails. She had built an entire new train system, fueled by pettiness. But it got better. By noon, texts started flooding in from neighbors. Hey, did you really have propane tanks stacked by the pool? Did you get cited for smoking endangered animals? Karen had gone full propaganda mode, spreading gossip faster than wildfire, and every story was more ridiculous than the last. That night, my wife gently asked if maybe I could hold off on grilling for a while. I looked at my smoker, like it was a loyal dog being told to stay in its kennel. If I stop now, she wins, I said. If we give an inch, next she'll be telling us how to breathe. It wasn't about the ribs anymore. It was about principle. It was about Sundays, backyards, the sacred smoky smell of freedom. That's when it hit me. I wasn't just going to fight back. I was going to turn her petty little war into a full-blown public spectacle. Karen thought one barbecue was a threat. Wait until she saw what happened when the entire block joined in. Part 3. Flyers, Fire, and Fury. The next morning, I sat at the kitchen table, sipping my coffee, staring at the absurd HOA citation. The more I read it, the more absurd it became. Violation of aquatic tranquility. Unauthorized disruption of recreational airspace. It sounded less like a legal notice and more like the rules of an alien planet. And that's when the plan started to form. If Karen wanted to turn grilling into a crime, I was going to turn it into a movement. First, I needed to take the neighborhood's temperature. So I mowed my front yard a little slower than usual, stopped to chat with anyone pulling weeds, walking dogs, or just pretending to check the mail. Sure enough, Karen had been busy. People were whispering about fire trucks, explosions, even illegal meats. One neighbor asked if I had been running a black market exotic barbecue stand. I nearly choked laughing. It was clear Karen had been spreading smoke of her own. But the best part? Most people didn't believe a word of it. In fact, they were more annoyed they hadn't been invited to the barbecue. Old man Tucker from 2 doors down slapped me on the back. Next time you're cooking those ribs, save me a plate before the HOA bans flavor altogether. Mrs. Patel smiled and said the fire truck was the most excitement she'd seen since her grandkids visited. Even the mailman winked as he handed me a letter. Heard you're running an underground grill ring. People were tired of Karen's nonsense, and this time, they were ready to push back. That night, I opened my old laptop, designed a flyer that read, First Annual HOA Cook-Off, Settling the Smoke Once and for All. Big, bold letters. Date? 2 Saturdays from now. Location? My backyard. Rules? Bring your own tongs. With the help of my teenage son, we printed 50 copies, and under the cover of night, we taped them to every door, mailbox, and community bulletin board we could find, including Karen's. I made sure to tuck one neatly under the stone owl statue on her porch. With a little extra piece of tape, just so it wouldn't blow away. The next morning, the neighborhood was buzzing. Texts, calls, even a few handshakes. Is this real? Can I help? I'll bring my smoker. Can I be a judge? By noon, it was official. Karen had declared war, and now the whole block was ready to fight, with fire, flavor, and a lot of hickory smoke. Part 4. The Smoker Awakens. It didn't take long for the news to reach Karen. Around noon, she came stomping up my walkway, waving the flyer in one hand like it was radioactive. I opened the door, already smiling. "Hey, Karen," I said brightly. "Ready for the big day?" "What is this?" she snapped, shaking the flyer. "It's an open challenge," I said, keeping my tone cheerful. "You called 911 over ribs. Let's see if you can outgrill the block." Karen's eyebrows tried to launch off her forehead. "I am not participating in some juvenile meat circus," she barked. "This violates HOA gathering protocols. You need a permit for an event this size." I grinned wider, pulling out a copy of the HOA bylaws I'd printed the night before. "Wrong," I said, flipping to the right section. "Private gatherings, on private property, are exempt, as long as traffic isn't blocked." Karen's jaw clenched so tight, I thought she might snap a molar. "If you proceed with this," she hissed, "you will regret it." I shrugged, already regretting not inviting the firefighters to stay for brisket last time. She spun on her heel and stormed off, furious, but trapped. Because here's the thing about Karen. She can't resist a stage. By that evening, word had spread like wildfire. More neighbors wanted in. People offered to bring folding tables, grills, even a Bluetooth speaker setup. Within 3 days, we had 11 competitors signed up, and guess who added her name to the list at the last second? Karen. In all caps, she wrote, "Salmon, gluten-free, farm-raised." Her ego wouldn't let her back down, not with the whole neighborhood watching. The battle lines were drawn. The grills were being polished. And Karen? She was about to find out. You can only poke the brisket king for so long before the smoker awakens. Part 5, Smoke Signals and Secret Weapons. The next few days were a whirlwind. Neighbors began volunteering left and right. The Rodriguez twins offered their patio heaters, just in case it got chilly. Jake rolled over folding tables and a Bluetooth speaker set up. Mrs. Patel said she'd bring lemonade and homemade samosas. It wasn't just a cook-off anymore. It was turning into a block party revolution. I even created an online sign-up sheet for competitors. By midweek, we had 11 grillers confirmed, each ready to bring their A-game. And Karen? Oh, Karen was busy too. She wasn't just prepping her salmon. She was going door to door, campaigning like it was a mayoral election, handing out flyers about the health risks of grilled meats, quoting articles about 7,000 chemicals in smoke. One neighbor even posted her flyer on Facebook with the caption, "Karen trying to turn burgers into bioweapons." It got shared 17 times. Even the neighborhood kids started calling her Smokezilla. Meanwhile, I deep-cleaned my grill, bought premium cuts of brisket and ribs, and prepped a homemade dry rub passed down from my grandfather. This wasn't just a barbecue. This was destiny, wrapped in tin foil and slow-smoked for maximum flavor. The HOA board tried to intervene, of course. They sent an official email warning that the cook-off was not authorized, that I could face fines for non-compliant congregation. I printed that email, framed it, and hung it above my grill. The more they tried to shut it down, the bigger the event got. By Friday night, the whole neighborhood was buzzing. Coolers were being packed, grills were being shined, people were swapping recipes like athletes prepping for the Olympics. Karen had no idea what she had started, but she was about to find out. The smoke was rising. The meat was marinating, and the battle was just beginning. Part 6. The Great Grill Off begins. The sun rose on Saturday, bright, hot, and crackling with tension. It felt like the world itself knew drama was about to unfold. Birds chirped, grills rolled into driveways. The sweet, smoky scent of marinated meat hung heavy in the air, like a promise. By noon, my backyard had transformed into the unofficial stadium of suburban rebellion. Tables lined the fences, folding chairs dotted the grass, banners flapped in the breeze. One hand painted by the Rodriguez twins read, "Smoke War 2025. It was glorious. Neighbors strolled by with coolers and lawn chairs, laughing, chatting, buzzing with anticipation. The first grills fired up around noon. Sizzles filled the air. Music blasted from Jake's Bluetooth speakers. Kids raced around with water balloons. It wasn't just a cook-off. It was a full-blown rebellion, wrapped in bacon. And then she arrived. Karen, emerging like a villain stepping onto a red carpet. She wasn't dressed for grilling. No. She wore a crisp white linen outfit, gloves, and a branded apron that read, "Eat Clean, Grill Green." She had a portable electric grill, 2 assistants carrying coolers and trays, and a smug smile so wide it could have been seen from space. Karen set up her station carefully. Perfectly spaced eucalyptus leaves, lemon slices, a Himalayan salt lamp. Meanwhile, I was brushing my brisket with a homemade honey chili glaze, the meat shimmering like a golden trophy. The judges arrived, fashionably late, of course. Old Man Tucker showed up in a referee jersey. Mrs. Patel carried a clipboard, looking dead serious, and Nikki from down the street, known for her brutal honesty, brought her own sterilized fork and knife set. The crowd gathered, lawn chairs spilling into driveways. Music bumped, kids giggled. The neighborhood had never looked so alive, and Karen had never looked so nervous. I stepped forward, tongs in hand, and raised them high. "Welcome, everyone. Let the great grill off. Begin!" exclamation mark. The crowd roared. Karen flinched, and just like that, the battle for backyard glory was officially on. Part 7. Flames, sabotage, and sweet victory grills roared to life. Smokers puffed out clouds like miniature steam engines. The whole street transformed into a carnival of smells, sizzling meat, caramelizing sauces, roasting veggies. Neighbors wandered from station to station, sampling bites, chatting, laughing. Everywhere you looked, there was joy. Everywhere except Karen's station. Her tiny electric grill sputtered and hissed. More smoke came off her essential oil diffuser than her actual salmon. She stood there, barking orders at her assistants, tweaking lemon slices, adjusting eucalyptus branches. It wasn't cooking. It was a photo shoot. Meanwhile, my brisket, slow smoking under layers of foil, smelled like heaven itself. The judges made their rounds. Old Man Tucker giving enthusiastic nods, Mrs. Patel scribbling serious notes, Nikki taking tiny, devastating bites. Karen, ever the showman, served her salmon on little rice crackers, each topped with a single caper and a whisper of microgreens. She gave a speech about heart health and emotional balance. Some people clapped, most just blinked. When it was my turn, I laid out my platter. Brisket slices shimmering with glaze, ribs stacked high, a side of smoky corn salad that glowed in the afternoon light. "No frills," I said, smiling, "just wood, fires, and love." I watched as Tucker's eyes widened at his first bite. Mrs. Patel hummed appreciatively. "Nikki?" She chewed, paused, then took another bite without saying a word. Victory. Tasted close. But Karen wasn't done yet. As the judges tallied scores, Karen marched to the center of the gathering, and, with all the drama of a villain unveiling a master plan, announced loudly, "Just a reminder that grilled red meat has been linked to heart disease and aggressive behavior." The crowd froze, and then, from the back, someone shouted, "So has being a Karen." The eruption of laughter was instant. Belly laughs, claps, even a few high fives. Karen turned scarlet. The judges stepped forward, Nikki holding the final score sheet. "After some delicious deliberation," she said, "third place goes to Steve for his pineapple jalapeno chicken." Polite claps. Second place to polite nods. Karen stood tall, smiling tightly like she'd just won. And first place, Nikki paused dramatically, goes to our resident smoke slinger, the brisket king himself. The crowd exploded. Cheers! Whistles! Someone popped a soda can in celebration. I raised my tongs high, grinning ear to ear. Karen? She stood frozen, lemon slices wilting in her hands. The neighbors hoisted me onto a folding chair, declared me the honorary grill master of the block. Karen disappeared sometime after that, melting into the background like a ghost at her own funeral. But me? I stayed right where I was, surrounded by laughter, music, and the rich, glorious smell of smoked meat, knowing we hadn't just won a cook-off, we'd taken back the neighborhood, one brisket slice at a time. Part 8. Karen's Last Stand. I half expected it to be over after the cook-off, but Karen, she wasn't the kind to lose quietly. 2 days later, a formal grievance arrived in my mailbox, filed with the HOA board, claiming that my public performance of grilling had incited chaos and violated community fire ordinances. She even attached grainy screenshots of the cook-off, including one where I was mid-cheer holding a rib like a trophy. She labeled it evidence of unlawful culinary celebration. I couldn't stop laughing, but I didn't go into the next HOA meeting unprepared. I walked in early, wearing my grill master apron proudly. Karen was already there, seated stiffly at the long table, a thick folder of complaints stacked neatly in front of her. She looked like she was prepping for a courtroom showdown. And I looked like I was prepping for another barbecue. The meeting began. Karen launched into a speech about weaponized food gatherings and emotional smoke trauma. She demanded new emergency bylaws, no grilling within 30 feet of any water feature, no gatherings over 5 people without prior approval, no aggressive meat celebrations. The board sat there, stunned, until I calmly stood and laid out my own evidence. Messages of support from neighbors, photos of smiling families, petitions demanding more community events with food, even a voicemail from Fireman Joe himself, laughing and saying, "You throw a better event than our firehouse chili cook-off." When I finished, the room was silent. Then Dave, the quietest member of the board, stood up and said, "Karen, I think we've had enough." The board voted. Karen's bylaw proposals, denied. Her grievance, dismissed. Instead, the HOA officially encouraged safe neighborly culinary events. Karen's face turned a shade of red that would make my chili powder jealous. She stormed out without a word, her dreams of a grill-free dictatorship going up in smoke. And me? I strolled home slowly, hands in my pockets, breathing in the sweet lingering scent of hickory and justice. Because sometimes, you don't just win with fire, you win with flavor. Part 9, the final sizzle. You'd think after the cook-off defeat and the HOA meeting fiasco, Karen would finally back down. But Karen? Oh no. She had one last, desperate trick up her sleeve. 3 days later, there was a knock at my door. A man in khakis stood there, holding a clipboard. City code enforcement. Apparently, someone had reported me for operating an unlicensed commercial barbecue establishment. I almost burst out laughing. Instead, I smiled politely and invited him into the backyard. He inspected the smoker, took a few notes, asked if I was selling food. "Nope," I said, flipping a leftover rib onto a plate. "Just feeding some very happy neighbors." He sniffed the air appreciatively, and 2 ribs later, he left with a to-go box, wishing me happy grilling. No violations found. Karen's next move? Noise complaints. 3 separate reports, claiming my barbecue events involved aggressively joyful music and unlawful meat-related chanting. At this point, even the HOA board started ignoring her emails. But Karen wasn't just losing battles. She was losing the war. And it was making her reckless. At the next HOA meeting, she showed up dramatically dragging a giant poster board. She unveiled it with a theatrical flourish, revealing blown-up photos of backyard grills, birthday candles, even a kid roasting a marshmallow over a tiny fire pit. Karen demanded a permanent ban on open flames. The room was dead silent. Until Dave stood up, the same quiet board member from before. "Karen," he said, voice calm but firm, "I think we've all had enough." And right there, in front of everyone, the board voted to strip Karen of her subcommittee position. She wasn't kicked out of the HOA, but her clipboard, her self-appointed authority, gone. Karen stormed out, papers fluttering behind her like defeated flags. And just like that, the era of Karen was over. The smell of barbecue, of laughter, of freedom, lingered long after she was gone. Because in the end, flavor always wins. Part 10. The Great Move Out. 2 weeks after Karen's spectacular implosion, a "For Sale" sign appeared on her lawn, bright red, bold, desperate. The listing description was even better. Located in a vibrant, health-conscious community. Translation: neighborhood too smoky for me. I laughed so hard, I nearly dropped my ribs. The neighbors were buzzing. Speculation flew faster than gossip at a bake sale. "She's leaving because of the cook-off. She can't handle the flavor. Maybe she's moving somewhere with stricter tofu laws." Meanwhile, life around here, it had never been better. Sunday grills fired up without fear. Kids played tag while the scent of smoked brisket floated through the air. Someone even organized a welcome back to sanity block party. No clipboards, no citations, no Karen. And then, the final cherry on top, on moving day. Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, glaring daggers at the entire block. No neighbors came to help. No one offered cookies. No one even waved. She barked orders at the poor moving guys, dragging her stone owl, her Himalayan salt lamp, and her dignity out one box at a time. I stood on my porch, sipping sweet tea, watching it all like it was the season finale of the best reality show ever made. And just as the moving truck pulled away, Jake, my buddy from 2 houses down, fired up his smoker, sending one last glorious cloud of hickory smoke drifting across her now empty driveway. Karen turned, caught a whiff, and scowled so hard I swear the clouds parted. I raised my glass to her, saluted silently, and whispered, "Smoke 'em if you got 'em." She vanished around the corner. And just like that, peace returned to the neighborhood. Real peace. The kind you can taste, thick with barbecue, and sweeter than any victory chant. Part 11. Legends are forged in smoke. The weeks after Karen's departure were nothing short of magical. It was like someone had lifted a giant, invisible weight off the whole neighborhood. Smokers fired up on Sundays without fear. Kids played soccer across front yards without unauthorized ball movement citations. People smiled, waved, invited each other over for impromptu barbecues. For the first time in years, it felt like home again. The HOA bulletin board. It no longer displayed dry warnings about trash bins and hedge height. Instead, photos from the cook-off were pinned proudly. Snapshots of neighbors laughing, kids splashing, plates piled high with ribs and brisket. Someone even printed a giant banner that read, "In Smoke We Trust." It hung over the entrance to our cul-de-sac for a full month. Neighbors who used to barely nod at each other now organized monthly grill and chill nights. Jake dubbed me the mayor of meat. Someone else designed t-shirts that said, "Smoke responsibly, unless you're Karen." They sold out in 2 days. The best part? No more fear, no more walking on eggshells, no more worrying about a clipboard lurking behind every bush, just laughter, the sizzle of barbecue, the smell of hickory and mesquite. One lazy Sunday afternoon, I sat on my porch, plate of ribs balanced on one knee, iced tea sweating in the other hand, watching families play, hearing music drift from backyard speakers, feeling the summer sun on my face. And I smiled. Because this was what it was all about. A neighborhood, a community, built not on fear and fines, but on flavor, friendship, and just a little bit of righteous smoke. Karen thought she could rule with rules, but in the end, it was brisket, burgers, and backyard battles that truly forged a legend. And somewhere out there, maybe, just maybe, Karen was breathing in the scent of someone else's barbecue and remembering the day she lost a kingdom to the grill. Part 12. Epilogue: Smoke, Freedom, and Forever. Sometimes on quiet evenings, I still catch the scent of barbecue drifting through the cul-de-sac. It's not always from my smoker anymore. Sometimes it's Jake's new grill roaring to life. Sometimes it's Mrs. Patel's veggie skewers sizzling on a tiny hibachi. Sometimes it's just the whole neighborhood, celebrating nothing in particular, just living. And every time that smoky breeze floats by, I smile. Because it's not just about meat, or grills, or even backyard parties. It's about something bigger. It's about claiming your space. It's about standing up against petty tyrants with clipboards. It's about remembering that freedom, real, delicious, fire-roasted freedom, starts right in your own backyard, somewhere out there. Karen probably still fumes whenever she smells ribs. Maybe she blames the universe. Maybe she blames me. But around here, we remember the cook-off, the laughter, the victory, the day we smoked out fear and served up something better, flavor, friendship, and a future free of nonsense. All it took was one backyard, one brisket, and a whole lot of smoke. And so, as the sun sets behind my freshly polished grill, I raise my tongs high, smile into the golden light, and say, "Long live the smoke."